It all began with a tweet. The nation was reeling from the latest economic report: record inflation spikes, surging gas prices, and small businesses shutting down faster than they could open. In the midst of this turmoil, a fiery Twitter exchange lit a match to the powder keg of American political tension. Senator Ted Cruz, never one to shy away from a fight, posted, "The American people don't need socialist dreams. They need real solutions. Inflation isn't solved with slogans. It's solved with strategy." Within minutes, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, to her millions of followers, fired back. "Ted, you wouldn't know a solution if it was reading green eggs and ham at your book club. Let's debate. Let's do it live." America collectively paused. Was this real? Would two of the most polarizing figures in American politics actually go toe-to-toe on live television? The answer came quickly. CNN announced the Great American Debate to be aired in primetime: Ted Cruz versus Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the future of America's economy. No filters. No moderators. Just two lawmakers, one stage, and one question: what should America do now? Millions tuned in the night of the debate. The studio was electric. Both parties' loyalists were glued to their screens. The left saw it as a chance for AOC to dismantle Cruz's conservative ideologies. The right saw it as Cruz's moment to expose the hollowness of progressive talking points. As the opening music faded and the camera panned to the sleek, high-tech set, America braced itself. Ted Cruz walked in first, calm and collected, wearing a navy suit and red tie. AOC followed, confident in a sharp white blazer, symbolic, bold, unafraid. The moderator welcomed them, then announced, "Tonight's format is simple: no time limits, no buzzers. Just ideas. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, you may begin." AOC leaned into her mic, her voice calm but sharp. "Americans are tired. Tired of being exploited by billionaires. Tired of working 2 jobs and still not affording rent. What we need now is a Green New Deal that doesn't just address climate change but transforms the economy." The audience erupted in applause. AOC was in her zone, charismatic, driven, passionate. Then Cruz leaned forward, his voice steady, every word deliberate. "With all due respect, Congresswoman, slogans don't pay bills. You talk about the Green New Deal like it's a magic wand. But what you're proposing isn't salvation, it's economic suicide." Gasps. The crowd went silent. OC smirked. "Oh, you mean like bailing out corporations during COVID while Americans waited in food lines? Or was that just good old-fashioned capitalism?" Cruz smiled. "Let's talk numbers. You want to spend $93 trillion. That's more money than all the wealth in the world. Where's it coming from? Fairy dust? Unicorn farms?" Laughter rippled through the audience. Even some liberals chuckled. But AOC wasn't fazed. "It's called investment. Like FDR did. Like Eisenhower did. Bold government action to save the nation." Ted raised a brow. "FDR saved the nation by winning a world war. Not by mandating electric scooters and vegan cafeterias." Boom. Applause. The first 10 minutes were fiery. It wasn't just a clash of policy. It was a war of wit, vision, and raw emotion. And it was just getting started. The atmosphere in the studio thickened. Commentators across the country were already lighting up social media with reactions. TikTok clips, live tweets, YouTube live streams. America was watching not just a debate, but a political thunderstorm. Ted Cruz didn't wait. He adjusted his mic and leaned in. "You claim to be the voice of the people, but every time you speak, it's about more control, more government, more taxes. You want to punish success and hand out participation trophies for failure." AOC fired back, her tone biting but clear. "What you call success, Senator, most Americans call exploitation. Billionaires made trillions during the pandemic while essential workers died with no health care. You defend the rich because you serve the rich." The crowd oohed. A visible wave of tension rippled across the stage. Cruz didn't flinch. "I serve the Constitution. You serve ideology. Your policies would turn America into Venezuela." AOC smirked. "Ah yes, the classic Venezuela card. The go-to-scare tactic when you've got no real argument. Newsflash, Senator, wanting people to have health care and a livable wage isn't Marxism, it's basic humanity." There was a standing ovation from one side of the audience. Cruz waited for the applause to die down. Then he dropped the hammer. "You talk about humanity? You support open borders policies that are fueling human trafficking. You support defunding the police in communities that are begging for more safety. You cry for climate change but fly first class to every climate summit. Boom. Silence. Even AOC blinked. Then she snapped back. I'm sorry, are you lecturing me on climate hypocrisy while you've taken more oil and gas money than anyone in Congress? You held Texas hostage during a deadly freeze while you flew to Cancun. You don't get to talk about responsibility. Crowd, oh ch. Even the moderator, though technically silent, looked shaken. Cruz, however, smiled slowly. The lawyer in him was ready. That Cancun line? Cute. But let's be real, your performative politics don't help people. You Instagram live from your kitchen while pushing policies that kill small businesses. You say you're for the working class, but you are the champagne socialist in designer heels. AOC's nostrils flared. And you're the king of fake populism. You talk down to the elites while doing their bidding. You call yourself a constitutionalist, yet you tried to overturn an election based on lies. That hit hard. Cruz's expression tightened. I fought for transparency. You fight for tyranny wrapped in TikToks. A hush fell. This wasn't just a debate anymore. This was war. Backstage, both of their teams were pacing like sports coaches during a playoff game. The CNN producers debated cutting to commercial, but the ratings were skyrocketing. In homes across America, families were split, some cheering for Cruz's ruthless takedowns, others in awe of AOC's fire and passion. In swing states, undecided voters leaned in. This wasn't just about economic theory, it was about who could speak for the people and to them. Then came the moment no one expected. AOC turned toward Cruz, her tone suddenly calm. Ted, what do you think happens to this country if we keep tearing each other apart like this? Do you ever think about that? For a moment, there was silence. Ted looked at her and then slowly said, I think that's the only thing I think about. Every single day. And just like that, a rare human moment pierced the tension. But it wouldn't last long. Because what came next would change the tone of the debate and the nation forever. The brief moment of civility between Cruz and AOC sent ripples through the audience. People leaned forward. Could this debate pivot from chaos to clarity? Not a chance. Because just as it seemed a détente might form, Cruz dropped what would become the moment of the night, a verbal sledgehammer designed to leave a permanent mark. You speak of unity, he said, his voice calm but ice-cold, but every time you speak, you divide. You call people racist, sexist, transphobic just for disagreeing with you. You don't want debate, you want obedience. AOC narrowed her eyes. And you, she replied slowly, cloak your agenda in tradition and patriotism, but you're pushing a 1950s fantasy where corporations control everything and the working class is disposable. You call me radical, but it's radical to believe insulin should cost $400 a month. The crowd roared again, especially younger viewers in the audience, holding up signs that read AOC for all and healthcare is a right. Cruz waited. And then came his mic drop. He reached under his podium and pulled out a thin binder. He flipped it open, then held it up for the cameras. This, he said, is a list of every small business in New York's 14th congressional district that closed permanently during the pandemic. Hundreds. Your district. Your constituents. While you were going viral on Twitch, they were losing everything. A stunned hush fell over the room. Even AOC seemed momentarily frozen. Cruz continued, you want to lead the nation? Start by protecting the people who elected you. Boom. Mic drop. It was a strategic masterstroke using AOC's own district against her. And the crowd, half stunned and half impressed, responded with thunderous applause. AOC slowly stepped forward. She wasn't backing down. Senator Cruz, she said, you're holding that list like it's some sacred text, but let me ask you something. How many of those businesses applied for PPP loans that your party delayed? How many got shut out because billion-dollar companies jumped to the front of the line while you did nothing? She stepped around the podium now, fully facing him. You say I was on Twitch? I was raising $5 million in 2 days for Texans without power when you were on a beach. So don't lecture me about my people. The audience exploded. Chants of AC rang out from one side. The Cruz loyalists, though fewer in number, clapped defiantly. Cruz stood motionless, letting the roar pass. Raising money is admirable, he said. But raising awareness without delivering results is just performance art. You don't change the system by going viral. You change it by making tough choices. And all you make are headlines. AOC's jaw clenched, but she didn't respond immediately. For the first time that night, it wasn't clear who held the advantage. Commentators scrambled behind the scenes to interpret what had just happened. The binder. The Twitch clapback. The crowd's volatile energy. Twitter was in full meltdown. Hashtag CruzAOC was trending globally. Memes were already being generated before the debate had even ended. But what no one saw coming was what would happen next. Because both Cruz and AOC, bruised from rhetorical punches locked in this gladiatorial standoff, were about to face a question from an unexpected source that would send this entire debate spiraling into a brand new dimension. And it wouldn't come from the moderator. It would come from a teenager in the audience. As both Ted Cruz and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stood silently, locked in the political equivalent of a stare-down, the moderator nervously glanced at the teleprompter. But then came a voice. Young, clear, unexpected. Excuse me, can I ask something? Heads turned. Cameras swiveled. A teenager, maybe 16, stood up in the audience, his voice cracking slightly as he spoke again. I'm Tyler. I go to public school in Ohio. And I'm just wondering if either of you actually knows what it's like to be us right now. There was a pause. The studio, which had been a battlefield just moments before, went eerily still. Ted Cruz and AOC both turned to look at the kid. Tyler continued. My mom works 2 jobs. My dad got laid off. I get free lunch at school, but sometimes I skip dinner so my little sister can eat. My teacher says college might not even be an option unless I get a scholarship. He swallowed hard. I hear both of you argue about ideology and policy and billionaires and socialism. But do you know what it's like to live on the edge every single day? Like, do you feel it? It was a gut punch. And it wasn't just the politicians who felt it. The audience did too. Even the hardened camera crew looked stunned. For a moment, neither Cruz nor AOC responded. Then, slowly, AOC stepped forward. Tyler, thank you for saying that, she said, her voice softer than at any point in the night. I grew up in a situation not so different from yours. I waited tables. I cleaned floors. And I ran for office because I wanted kids like you to not have to fight so hard just to survive. She looked around the room. But I get it. Sometimes it feels like nothing changes, no matter who's in charge. That's not your fault. That's on us. A few people clapped, but the room was still mostly quiet, holding its breath. Then Cruz stepped forward. I grew up with a single mom, he began, looking directly at Tyler. She worked 2 jobs too. We didn't have money, and my dad walked out when I was a kid. I've made choices in government that people don't always agree with, but I never forgot where I came from. He took a deep breath. You're right. We get caught up in these wars of words, and sometimes we forget about you. But believe me, we're listening now. For a second, just a second, it felt like the shouting, finger-pointing, and partisanship had melted into something real. Tyler nodded quietly, eyes glossy. The cameras zoomed in. The moment went viral before it even finished unfolding. The moderator, sensing the opportunity, leaned in. Tyler, would you like to ask them one more thing? The boy hesitated. Then, nodding, he asked, so what are you going to do, together, to fix this? That question hit like a lightning bolt. Cruz and AOC glanced at each other. It wasn't a glare. It wasn't even rivalry. It was recognition. And for the first time that night, it seemed possible that something might actually transcend the politics. But the night wasn't over, because the final segment was approaching closing remarks. And Ted Cruz was about to unleash one last offensive that would force AOC into the most unexpected response of her political career. The gloves weren't just off anymore. They were on the floor, forgotten. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the final segment approached. The moderator, his voice now more solemn than scripted, turned to the debaters. We now move to closing remarks. Each of you has 2 minutes. Senator Cruz, you may begin. Cruz adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and leaned forward. He didn't blink. Tonight we heard a lot of passion. We heard anger. We heard personal stories. But now it's time to talk about solutions. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if your policies crush small businesses, explode inflation, and punish success, you're not helping people like Tyler. You're hurting them. He held up the binder again. This isn't just paper. These are dreams, American dreams, gone. They didn't vanish because of billionaires. They vanished because people in power made decisions without understanding the consequences. He glanced briefly at AOC. We don't need viral moments. We need vision. We need backbone. And we need to remember that the government works for the people, not the other way around. Polite applause. A few standing supporters. Then it was AOC's turn. She stepped up slowly, looked right into the camera, and did something that no one expected. She paused. Then she said, "Senator Cruz, for the first time tonight, we agree on something. The American dream is slipping away." Cruz blinked, surprised. "But here's where we part ways. You blame too much government. I blame a government that's been bought. Corporations write the rules, the ultra-rich avoid taxes, and the working class gets crumbs." She stepped forward. "Let me be clear, if standing up for Tyler means being called a radical, so be it. If fighting for Medicare for all means I get attacked by billionaires, let them come. Because I'd rather lose fighting for everyday Americans than win protecting the powerful." Thunderous applause. Even some Cruz supporters stood up. But then Ted Cruz smiled. And it wasn't a smirk. It wasn't smug. It was strategic. "Representative Ocasio-Cortez," he interrupted, holding up a hand. "I want to thank you." OC turned to him, puzzled. "For what?" "For finally admitting this isn't about helping people, it's about changing the system entirely. You don't just want reform. You want revolution." The crowd murmured. "You want to take us somewhere America's never been, where the government runs everything, redistributes wealth, and punishes success." He turned to the crowd now. "She doesn't want to fix America. She wants to remake it." Gasps. Cheers. Boos. Every reaction at once. AOC stepped back, visibly stunned for a beat. But then she leaned into the mic and said, "If making sure no kid goes hungry is remaking America, then yes, I want a new America." Roars from the left side of the crowd. The moderator stood up, hands raised. "Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes tonight's debate." But it wasn't over. Because Tyler, the teen from Ohio, walked up to the edge of the stage, his eyes locked with both leaders. "I just hope," he said quietly, "that after all this, you both remember what it felt like to listen, not just argue." The crowd stood in unison. Not for Cruz. Not for AOC. For Tyler. And for a brief, flickering moment, beneath the lights, the banners, and the broken politics, it felt like something might have changed. Even if just for one night. The headlines the next morning told the tale. Ted Cruz destroys AOC in primetime firestorm, Fox News. AOC strikes back with vision for a new America, MSNBC. Teen steals the show at historic Cruz-AOC debate, CNN. But for the American people, it wasn't the headlines that mattered. It was the question Tyler had asked. And the answers that still hadn't come.